Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. And now, celebrating 15 years of broadcasting, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether you're tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM or through WYADonline.com. We're glad you all could join us, as well as tuning in through our online affiliates around the world, including our iHeartRadio family. We're glad you all could be with us as well. I'm excited to welcome author Roger Johns to our program today. Roger is celebrating the release of a brand new book called River of Secrets. Now, if Roger's name sounds familiar, many people know him because of his debut novel, Dark River Rising. We'll talk to him about the success of the books he's been able to write, but also what it's been like for him to craft these storylines that really have people talking. If you're just now hearing about Roger's new book, I'll let you know at the end of our segment how you can get your own copy of it, as well as stay connected with Roger himself. Roger, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Cyrus, thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, glad to do it, Roger. First of all, congratulations to you on River of Secrets. As I mentioned, we're going to let our audience know how they can get their own copy of the book a little bit later. What has it been like for you, Roger, to see the way that people are already responding to the new book?
It's been great. I've already begun to get email about the book. I, of course, have sent review copies out, and the reviews have been positive. It was what I had hoped it would be. There's always a bit of anxiety with a second book involving the same character, because one wonders if you could keep the intensity going, and one wonders if people's experience with a character the first time will be as positive when they see this person in a new story in a slightly new context. But so far, it's been good.
Right. Good. Well, I think what was so interesting, and I have not read the first book, Roger, so that means I'm going to have to go back and read Dark River Rising. When you finished the first book, though, did you already know in your mind that, that there were different components of this book, especially when it comes to the main character, that you wanted to be able to continue?
Not in the beginning. It was a case where an idea for the first book came to me, and I was probably one or two drafts in when I realized the character might actually have legs and could go from one book to another. And that was a discovery for me. A happy discovery, by the way.
Right. Well, what I think is so interesting about the main character, and that is Wallace Hartman, is that, of course, here's someone who has a job to do. But what I love about what we're able to see in River of Secrets, and I can talk around this, Roger, so I don't spoil it for people, is that, at the end of the day, Hartman is an individual, right? She's a woman. She's an individual who knows what it's like to have things affect one's personally, even though you try to keep, personal and professional, separate. In this book, it really shows how difficult that can be, how especially, when you're trying to do what's right, how that makes you an easy target. What was it like for you to kind of create the layers of her?
This has been the most interesting and probably the most fun part of all of this. In the first book, she suffers just as she does in the second book. And I made a commitment that I would let the rigors of her job and the rigors of her personal life affect her, and just let her personal innate resilience deal with this, and let the chips fall as they may. I guess maybe in the very beginning I tried to portray her more as a superhuman character, able to do everything and suffer not a scratch, but that didn't work out. It left her looking cartoonish and unrealistic. So eventually I came to the idea, I'm just going to let her be who she's going to be. And it's turned out to be quite an interesting and transformative experience for me, especially because the character began as a male character, and that just didn't work. So I changed it to a female character and spent a lot of time with a women's writing group learning how to write from a female point of view. And it's just been, it's changed me as a person as well as a writer. Something that I'm very grateful for.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. So that means that we have to go back a little bit then, Roger, for our audience to really get a better picture. When did you first discover, because I should let people know that, of course, before you were an author, had author by your name, you were an attorney. When did you first realize that storytelling was something that you were interested in?
It's a hard one to pin down, Cyrus. I think storytelling has always been a part of me. I've been involved some sort of storytelling, I guess, all my life. I was the kid in the neighborhood who wanted to put on the plays. I was involved with my literary magazine in high school. I was the one who wrote the faculty roast shows when I was in law school. So there's been some aspect of me that has always been there. I think I just, growing up, didn't see that as a way to make a living. I didn't maybe have the courage to pursue that as something because there's not, some sort of a set path like there is. If you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school, you work for a law firm, and you have the career. But it's hard to find a way to see being a writer, at least from me and my upbringing. It was hard for me to see that. So it's just sort of something that's lurked in the shadows. And when I retired a few years ago, it reared its head again. So I just went with it, so to speak.
And now here you are being able to craft these mysteries, and these mysteries that I think that are entertaining, Roger, as I mentioned, as River of Secrets definitely is, but also, it deals with issues that, are not too far-fetched. I mean, I think in many cases, you can say, things that might seem today to be, ripped from the headlines in many ways. Is that part of what is interesting for you, to be able to see how you can take what might be, even, potentially real-life situations, and to see what your characters would do in those situations?
Absolutely. That's a real challenge to be able to do that without putting my own preconceived notions into things. It's important to me to pay attention to what's happening around me and to show how, in sort of the microcosm of fiction, how things might work out. I mean, we do live sort of in troubled times, but there's a certain hopefulness as well to the things that are happening around us. And I enjoy being able to show both aspects of it, that yes, we face challenges, but yes, we can figure out our challenges if we work toward that and we're open to things.
There are two characters that I want to mention in relation to Hartman and the way that Hartman deals with them. One, of course, is Burley, that our readers will be able to realize who they are. There's a great interchange that you write between Wallace and Burley in the book as they're trying to kind of sift things out. And one of the things that I love about this particular scene, reason why I'm bringing it up, Roger, is because I think it goes to what I was saying earlier about here is, Wallace Hartman, just someone who wants to do their job. And then, of course, feeling as though in the one incident, feeling as though her motives might be questioned. I mean, there is that great quote that you have in the book where basically Burley says it's not a matter of what needs to be done, it's about who should be doing it. What was it like for you to kind of put her in a situation, again, as we were saying, she's an individual, even though, as you said, she's an individual who does her job well, but still to have, her motives sometimes even maybe brought into question, or even her intent brought into question?
There's very little of me in these books, but I spent a lot of years as an academic and in the college setting. And there's a role in the academy, and it's the department chair, that is the most difficult job there is, because the faculty members view this person as an administrator. The administrators view the department chair as just another faculty member who's, maybe risen a little above. And so they don't belong to either camp, and nobody really likes them. They're caught in between, so to speak, and they're not really able to do one job or the other. They have to sort of balance the demands of things above them with the necessities of the people that work for them. And as much as I didn't want to do it, at some point I found myself being a department chair for a few years. And the experience was just awful for me. I disliked it a great deal. I did it, but I disliked it. So this Burley character, who is Wallace's boss, is sort of modeled on what my experience was like there. You're neither fish nor fowl, let's say, and you're caught in between. And he wants to do the right thing, but he has to represent the attitudes and preferences of those above him, while still trying to facilitate what the people that are out there on the street doing the day-to-day need to get done. So it's hard for him. I like the Burley character. I'm sympathetic with him because I remember being in that role myself, the caught-in-between role, and no one is sympathetic to you when you're there. You're suddenly nobody's friend anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to contrast that with a conversation that Hartman has actually with the victim's son, Glenn. I'm going to get into that, Roger. I want to say, though, for those who are just tuning in on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. I'm excited to welcome author Roger Johns to our program today. We're talking with him about his brand new book called River of Secrets. We're going to let you guys know at the end of our segment how you can be able to get your own copy of the book, as well as stay connected with Roger to find out what's coming up next for him. This is a Wallace Hartman mystery, and Wallace Hartman finds herself in a situation where she's having a course to question individuals. One of those is the victim in the book's son, Glenn. And there's a great line about Glenn's father that you wrote, Roger, that I wanted to talk about, because I think it has a lot to do with, ironically, a lot of what we read in the book, even though he was directing it about his father. He said to Hartman, a lot of folks thought he was swimming against the tide of history, and a lot of others thought he was trying to drown them in it. I think, there are probably, other people in this book we can find that maybe that quote may pertain to them. What was it like for you to craft that line and to give it to Glenn?
I like Glenn a lot. Glenn is a troubled guy, but he's a smart guy, and he's someone who had to make his way on his own. His dad, the victim of the murder in this book, was quite an accomplished individual, but he largely ignored his son. And I think it's probably tough for a son who doesn't have the full attention of their parents to understand who they are as they grow up. So Glenn grew up feeling sort of neglected, and it took him a long time to find out who he is. And he's struggling with this. And I think that he was simply voicing to Wallace the same things that he felt in his relationship with his father, that his father was an accomplished man, and there were times when Glenn felt like he was simply drowning in the water around his father, unable to make his own way in the world because his father was such a large figure out in the world and in Glenn's mind as a young man. So he felt often that he was getting drowned as well. So I felt good about putting that in there because, as you observed, it said a lot of things to a lot of people, and it really resonates. I think it gave that relationship the flavor that I was looking for.
Right. Well, danger has a way it's finding its way all throughout this book with several characters. Of course, another thing that we hear about a lot today that we find even in River of Secrets, Roger, is, that nothing can really stay hidden, that there are leaks that get out, information gets out. There's a great line I remember seeing on one of my favorite shows, Dirty Little Secrets, always get out. Did you find that the leaking of information almost became a character in itself in the book?
It does, and you're right. Thank you for pointing that out. It does become a looming presence in the book because Wallace starts, once she believes that she's the victim of a leak within her department, something that's sabotaging her efforts, she has to modify her behavior almost as if she's reacting to another person, and almost as if she's attempting to outwit a physical adversary. And to me, it's the ultimate worst situation because you know it's happening and you know what the consequences are, but you don't know what the source of it is. You don't really know how to fight it, so you have to avoid it. And by avoiding it, you're avoiding a lot of other things that you might normally be able to use in your life because you don't know who you can trust. You don't know who the enemy is, so you can't really fight back. You're put back on your heels and you have to stay there. And that to me, that's the sort of situation that I would find personally very, very frightening and demoralizing.
And there are other things, too, that kind of find themselves in a sub-level in this book, Roger, and I'll mention just one of them because, it's interesting. One of the individuals who, and I'm not even going to name them because I don't want to spoil it for people as they're reading, they'll have to figure it out, who was formerly of law enforcement, I'll say that, who, was relieved of his duties because of overzealous use of methods that were not authorized by law enforcement. But they end up playing a role in this book as well. I think, for a lot of people, And again, the book is quite entertaining, and even though I'm picking up on these points, I want the audience to know the great thing I think that comes away from me when I was reading the book is to find out what's going to be next. And I'm going to ask Roger about that later. But what was it like for you, Roger, to kind of have all of these underlying things going on as there is the biggie in the book, which is the homicide?
Well, I wanted to do things in as realistic a way as possible, and whenever you look at any organization or any entity, there's going to be good in it and there's going to be bad in it. And sometimes the good and the bad come from surprising places that you would not expect them to come from. And this particular individual that you're talking about, as a reader will experience, it comes as no surprise that this guy is a bad guy, but it does come as a surprise where he comes from, given his experience. You would think, well, maybe he was a better person, maybe he could have been a better person, but it turned out he was just a rotten apple all along. And it's just part of the fabric of our society that things are this way, and people can go on for a long time behaving one way, and eventually you realize there's somebody else, and not in a good way, and that just contributes to the fabric of the story. I lived for a decade in Baton Rouge, and it's a wonderful city. It is, but it's a troubled city in some ways, and a lot of the troubles that the city was having are reflected in the characters like this individual that you bring up, people that give it a texture of underlying danger, where the city itself is a wonderful place and a lovely place to live, but there is this constant undercurrent of danger, and he contributes to it in a way that I think readers can relate to, because it's part of what we see every day in the newspaper.
Right. I think that's it. And I think that's one of the big things. I have this question for you, Roger. You may not be able to answer it, and if not, my feelings will not be hurt. But I was curious myself as a reader, and maybe you can't tell us because you don't want to spoil it for those who haven't read it, but what was one of the biggest surprises for you? Or maybe you can, instead of answering that, who was involved maybe in one of the biggest surprises for you in the book? Is that something you're able to tell us?
Well, I don't want to give anything away at the end of the book. Let me say this. I've written 2 books now, and in both cases, I've known who the bad person is, the one responsible for the horrible crime from the beginning. So in both cases, I reverse engineered it so that the plot obviously will lead to this preconceived idea I have. In this case, I'll put it this way. When we go through life and experience as much as Wallace has, there are always going to be blind spots. And it's just the nature of the human being, is that we're going to see things one way, and then one day something is going to happen, and it's going to change things. It's going to change the way we look at things that we have seen for years and years and years, and suddenly realize, well, that's not the way I thought it was. And that happens here. That's sort of the meat and potatoes thing for detective fiction, though, is that the reader and the detective are presented with the same set of facts, endlessly throughout the book, and something happens to provoke a change in perspective for the detective, and suddenly they see things in a way that's suddenly different, and that allows them to solve the crime. And in this case, Wallace saw something she didn't want to see, but in the end, she had to see it. And it made it hard to write because no one wants to, and I know I'm just sort of dancing around the ending of the book here, but I don't want to give anything away.
Oh, no, I totally get it.
We get to things, we don't want to say certain things, and then we have to. And that makes her more real and more sympathetic to me, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think, readers will definitely enjoy the book, and there's so much that they can take out of it. I've only pointed out just a few of the things, so definitely it gives our audience something to look forward to. Again, everyone, Roger Johns has been our guest. Great conversation with you, Roger. The book is called River of Secrets, a Wallace Hartman mystery. It's available now through our friends at Amazon.com. You all can get it there. And, Roger, how can our audience stay connected with you?
They can get to me through my website, which is www.rogerjohnsbooks.com, and there's a contact button there. that will send an email directly to me, and I answer all of my own email. And if readers get in touch with me, I will get back in touch with you just as soon as I can. It might take a day or so, but I'll be happy to do that. I love connecting.
Well, we love connecting with you as well, Roger. Congratulations to you on the book. I'll make sure that I get my review on Amazon.com soon, and looking forward to our next conversation together.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show. I've enjoyed myself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we definitely appreciate you all for tuning into this segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late, you missed part of the conversation with Roger, don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay right after we go off the air. The link is already available through our social media sites. So head over to Facebook.com/Cyrus Webb or go to Twitter.com/Cyrus Webb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share with your friends from there too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Let's make it a great one.